I hereby introduce to you Mr. Michael Veazey.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. This is your host, Michael Veazey. This is going to be a quick one. It's about time management. And I often find the irony of a lot of time management systems or advice is they take up a lot of time, which is not good if you're trying to save time. So I'm going to keep it brief. I'll do the honor of that. We have got lots of more exciting lengthy content coming up. One of the, I'm going to start with tips from the 4-Hour Workweek. In fact, that's all I'm going to focus on, I should say. From Tim Ferriss, sometimes beloved by some and controversial to others, but I think he had a lot of very, compressed and succinct wisdom that he'd brought together from other sources. No problem with that. So the first thing to say, as Tim Ferriss says, is lack of time is lack of priorities. If you find that you don't feel you've got enough time, that's because you're trying to do everything equally. And actually, I'm just making a note of that because I've forgotten to write that. Lack of time is lack of priority. So if you don't have a clear idea of what you want to achieve, then it doesn't really matter what you do anyway. As it says in Alice in Wonderland, Alice says something daft like, where do you want to, what's the quickest way to get out of here? And the Red Queen says, well, depends where you want to go. And she says, well, I don't know. We say, well, it doesn't really matter then, does it? So if you don't have a clear measure of what productive looks like for you personally, and it's not just numbers, it depends how far it takes you towards your goals, then, you're going to be wasting your time anyway. So the first thing is to clarify goals and values as well. I mean, goals are one thing. When you're starting out with e-commerce, if you haven't got products live yet, if you've got turnover, everything's very speculative. You've got to have some kind of goal. You don't get obsessed with reaching it incredibly fast. I mean, it normally takes much longer than you think. But the main thing is you've got to have a direction and you've got to have a set of values that you're clear about, okay? And the long-term big picture goals that you have in your life. I'm not going to rehash it here, but in episode 297, 298, we talked about Stephen Covey's begin with the end in mind. And if you haven't done that yet, you need to go and do that task. Number 2, if you had a heart attack and had to work 2 hours per day, what would you do? This is a classic question that Tim Ferriss poses. And that's quite the question. I think for me, that would probably mean I would do 2 things. I would hire VAs in my Amazon businesses anyway to work on product research, sourcing and launching. And then I would just give them access to my PLP course, the private label process course, because I've done it already. And I would practice what I preach. This is the consolidated version of all the processes that I and my business partner use in our businesses anyway. So I would just give them access to the PLP course. By the way, if you want access to that, it's currently shut. But if you want to be on the early bird VIP launch, when it relaunches in January, February time, go to amazingfba.com/PLP. P for private alpha label and P for process, PLP. amazingfba.com/PLP. So that's what I would do in response to that. Plus, I would probably just, the art for me would be finding great people and then outsourcing to them very clearly outsourced processes. So, you know what? The great thing about this question is very extreme. 2 hours a day, you just think, God, that's ridiculous. The only way you can deal with it is to be very systematic, to focus only on the top priorities and only really on very outsourced and leveraged ways of doing things. So there you go. So that's a very good tool, this question, very powerful tool. Number 3, what are the 3 top activities I used to feel as though I've been productive? For me, that would be answering emails. I think that's true for a lot of people. I try and be disciplined and only answer emails once a day, but I could still be more brutal and more succinct in my responses. The art is to be succinct and quick, but without being rude. And, one person's brief is another person's rude, but I think you can afford to be quite brief if you're getting a lot of emails in. What else would it be for me? It probably would be researching things without an actionable outcome or without it necessarily being prioritized. Very common for Amazon sellers to do research ad nauseum, but they haven't really taken the time to structure, what are you trying to achieve? Big long-term goals. What are you trying to achieve in the medium term? What strategic goals it hit? What processes are you using to achieve those goals? That sort of thinking takes more effort mentally, but actually is probably what you need to be doing if you're stuck in paralysis analysis. And that certainly happens to me from time to time. So there you go. There's a couple of my answers, but your answers may be different. So what are the top 3 activities I used to feel as though I've been productive? Very, very good question. Number 4, if I only accomplish this, will I be satisfied with my day? This is an excellent, excellent question to be asking. And if you haven't done that thing yet, you shouldn't be doing anything else with your day, really. I mean, for me, today, I've got to dash off and catch a flight soon, and I better be there. My wife will be skinning me alive. So, my business objective for the day is very simple. Apart from a client call, which was in between 9 and 10, is to get this podcast recorded and off to my trusty editor, and then it will be created by, without my intervention. Very simple, but what is it for you? Number 5, are you inventing things to avoid the important? Almost certainly, yeah. I mean, you might be, for example, obsessively organizing information, which seems to be something that we all end up doing when that's good. If the information is important, you need to be very organized with it. I mean, for example, financial information for your products, most of us could use being way more organized with that and more structured, in which case you should probably create a series of folders and a process for organizing it, but you shouldn't necessarily be doing it yourself. That's the sort of thing a VA should be doing for sort of $3, $4, $5 an hour out in the Philippines. There's some amazing people out there. Even if it needs doing, you should just question, okay, am I applying this lot of brain power and time and energy to something that makes no difference? And if you are, then you've got to stop. So this is the kind of thing that you've got to think about. Number 6 hint is extremely simple. Don't multitask, all right? It doesn't work. You've got to focus on what you're doing. And if something's important and you don't have much time to do it in, it's even more reason to focus hard and get it done. Number 7, finally, is using Parkinson's law on a micro and macro level. Now, my mum used to go on about Parkinson's law. Parkinson was but it doesn't mean it's wrong. She was right. Parkinson did a study of the British civil service in the 1950s, and discovered that basically work expands to fill the time available. That's not precisely what his study was about, but that's the kind of takeaway. So you got to use it in 2 ways. Attempt to leave or finish work an hour earlier than usual 2 days a week. So in other words, put a harsh deadline on things. Second part of that, or this is step 7 or tip 7. So 7A is attempt to leave work early, and having social incentives like seeing your friends or going on a date with your loved ones can be very powerful reasons to do that. I find that's a reason that I have to be more disciplined and get stuff done. 7B, limit the number of items on your to-do list. That's really, 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 really important. I can't stress enough. Having a to-do list of 20 things on it and getting 18 of them done doesn't make you a seriously productive person, because it doesn't really matter if 18 things out of the 20 don't move the needle. I mean, for me, as in the amazing FBA space, one of the most important things I can do is put out a podcast of value. It doesn't necessarily need to be long or deeply researched. Sometimes they are. We spend a lot of time and effort creating detailed show notes, blah, blah, blah. But in this case, I think the value is in cutting to the chase and being quite brief, but that doesn't mean it's not valuable. But that's what matters. Now, if I'd done 18 other things today, none of which involved providing value to an audience and then bringing them into my sphere of influence and nurturing that relationship, then my business is ultimately not going to live. It needs fresh people getting to know about what we offer here and how we can help them, and helping them and demonstrating you can give value by giving value. Guess what? Never goes out of style. So that is really important. And actually, if I don't get around to a bunch of other things today, that's not so important. So limiting the number of items on your to-do list is critical. I would truly say you should have maybe one thing that really matters, which comes back to the other question, number 4, which is, if I only accomplish this, will I be satisfied with my day? And I think you should just know what that one thing is and hammer that until it's done. And actually, it's way more important than any of the other stuff put together. And then 7C, this the third bit of using Parkinson's law on a micro and macro level, is using very short deadlines. For example, I thought I had 20 minutes to record this podcast, and then the first time it didn't record, and so I had 10. And guess what? I mean, it's been about 10 minutes that I've been recording, roughly. Yeah, exactly. 9 minutes, 39 seconds at this point. And guess what? I've done, because the point of this was to be brief anyway, to help people who are time poor. So if you want to get the written version of this, always helpful to have a written checklist, amazingfba.com/299. The show notes will go up with our trusty editor, Daniel. We'll get them up shortly. And that's it. So if I don't speak to you before, have a wonderful Christmas. And if you're listening to this after Christmas, this is evergreen stuff. Doesn't make any difference. I mean, all these tips still work. But do go and really, really read this. It won't take you long to read. I mean, it's sort of like 100 words or something. It's really, really seriously small amount of information to take in, but very, very powerful indeed if you actually apply this stuff. So this is great value information if you like. So I'm going to stop there because time management means your time's valuable, so is mine. So we're going to keep it brief today. and speak to you in the next show. Have a wonderful week. Cheers.